Greetings and salutations, my friend. In May of this year, I uploaded my first video in which I went into details about all the circumstances that led me to transitioning to a female and back again. Well, actually not a female, because I could never become a female, but you know what I mean. In order for you to get the best out of this video, I'd recommend you first watch my original video to understand my background and why I transitioned. I'd recommend you watching that video first. I'll leave the link like here. Just click on that and watch that video first and come back here, and I promise it'll be much better for you to understand this video if you watch that one first. Back when I was in middle school, where I was bullied relentlessly, I was living in a small Eastern European town, and that is not something I specifically mentioned in that video. So I didn't mention Norway. This is where I live right now, so people naturally assume that the bullying must have happened in Norway. No, that is not the case. I come from Eastern Europe. That's where I grew up. That's where I lived at that point. It's a very small town, and those small Eastern European towns, you know, it's like it's a completely different reality. And I'm not saying that all the conservatism is bad, because I do think that conservatism is a necessary ideology. I think those values are necessary for a society, just as liberal values are necessary, and I think they should coexist. But there are certain things like, you know, going too far, and those are not very liberal places to live. And if you happen to be different, if you do not fit a specific mold, then you feel it on your skin when you live in a place like that. It was a rough place to live, to be honest. Like, you couldn't stray away from this stereotype that you were supposed to be, you know. And I've mentioned that one of the reasons why I was bullied is because I had longer hair than other guys. And I was a guest on Winston Blair's, previously Odin's Man channel. And we had a great conversation. If you want to, you can watch it. No, really loved talking to the guy. But he did a reaction to my channel, to my videos on his Rumble account, worth watching too. I didn't have opportunity to say something I remember him saying in that video, and that is I had longer hair back then, maybe much longer than right now.
Well, cut it.
Mostly because I listen to a lot of like rock, metal music.
Okay.
I would wholeheartedly disagree with him here, because what he implies is that me having longer hair is the problem in and of itself. And I can't see a good reason why that should be the problem. I think the problem is people being unable to accept that some people just have a different style than them. And I'm not going to shave my head, I'm not going to be a skinhead, I'm not going to be someone I'm not. I think the problem is that kids are bullying other kids because they are different. And I don't think solution here is to fit into what they expect of me. I think the solution is to fix their mentality around it. And so it happened that I had to go back to that small town for the first time in many, many years this summer. And I haven't been there since 2009. That's been like 14 years. Absolutely crazy. And the reason why I had to go back there is because my grandmother died this summer. She had a brain swelling after a seemingly simple surgery. She could have lived much longer, but something happened, something went wrong, and she fell into a coma and died like 6 days later. So we had a funeral, and I stayed in that town for 5 days in total, in a house where we used to live. Back then it was me, my parents and my grandparents living together there. Then it was just my grandparents after we left. Going back was an absolutely wild experience. The first thing I've noticed when we were driving and we finally reached the town, at first I didn't even realize we were there. because it's been such a long time. I mean, I do remember the place, but it just looked different than I remembered it. And in a way, like, I always knew it was a shitty place. But when I first saw it, I was like, this place is even shittier than I remember it. What an absolute shithole it is. It's just beyond my words. I'm not good enough with words to explain the feeling I've experienced when I first arrived there. I was like, was it really that bad? And like, no wonder I absolutely hated this place, because I've always wanted to get out of there my entire life. And I was lucky that the circumstances that happened in my family's life allowed me to get out of there. Otherwise, I have no idea what would happen, to be honest, if I just continued living there. That being said, not all memories from there are bad. I think the last few years living in that town were the worst. It's really hard for me to fish for any good memories from that time period. Otherwise, like, my childhood was fairly okay, fairly peaceful. I have a lot of really pleasant childhood memories. So when we arrived at the house, it was like all of those bad memories and all of those good memories coming in, like, all at once, mixed up and blended in this strange way. And it hits you, like, right away, all at once, all the flashbacks just coming right back. And at first, I really didn't want to go there, but I was like, this is your grandmother's funeral. I think it will be really, really disrespectful. And one thing I said to myself, I'm never ever going to step my foot into that town ever again. But I think this is more important than me. I think this is more important than my traumas. So I had to overcome all of that and be there for my family when they needed me. And like I said, I think it will be very, very disrespectful if at this point I will prioritize my own mental health above my family, because I don't think there's anything in this world that matters to me more than my family. If the house seemed smaller than I remember it, maybe because I was smaller, or like the rooms, I always remember them being more spacey. Now it's more claustrophobic, it's so small. And for now, I'm just going to be talking about, like, my childhood memories. So if you want to get to the juicy part of this video, skip to a specific chapter that you're interested in. But I don't only want to talk about the bullying and the dysphoria and the transitioning, detransitioning, because I don't always want to talk about depressing stuff, Right now, I want to talk about my fucking awesome childhood memories. And that's what matters to me. One of the first thing I found, like, old pictures. It's always cool going through those, It's like a parade of memories in your own head when you're just looking at those pictures. It's absolutely amazing. And those are not just pictures of me, but also like old pictures of my parents back when they were like teenagers. Oh my god. And the whole place looked completely different. It's nothing like I remembered it, like the layout of all the furnitures and absolutely everything was completely different. The rooms were still in the same places as always, of course, no one moved that around, but everything else was absolutely unrecognizable, and for that reason I don't think it was that much of a strong experience if everything was the same as I remembered it, because it didn't feel like I was going back to the same place. It was different, at the same time the same. I found my first guitar that I ever played. It was like one of those old acoustic, electroacoustic guitars from the 60s, the times that the Beatles used to play. And at this point it's an antique. but there's sentimental value to that guitar. I sort of wish I brought it with me. It's you know, quite a souvenir. You know, later on, I would buy my Gibson Les Paul. I have it to this day, a black Gibson electric guitar. I play it quite regularly, make music. I always wanted to make music ever since I was a kid, and when I was 13 I started playing guitar, I started playing piano. I'm not that good at piano, but I'm fairly decent at guitar. I made and record my own music. It's one of my biggest passions. I didn't know that was a fashion. Around the time when I was in middle school and I was bowling, like guitar for me was like one of the escape mediums. You know, like I could just come back home and play guitar, and in my head I was a fucking rock star. I wasn't this, you know, wimpy kid at school who was being bullied. No, I was a fucking rock star in my own head, and that helped me get through it around that time. Another thing I did when I first entered the house is just going through the drawers, and I found all videotapes, you know, VHS videotapes. I used to record like a lot of shit that was on the TV around the time, so all of my favorite films I used to watch back then, I had them on those VHS tapes. Unfortunately, some of that shit is not working, which was disappointing, but you know, there's something magical about inserting videotape into a VHS player. I haven't done that in a long time, you know, but the thing is, I love VHS and I love vinyl, things like that. I'm kind of retro in that way, you know. I mean, in many ways, I'm stuck in the 90s. I rarely ever consume any medium, any films or music that came out after the year 2000. Most of the shit I like is from like the 90s, 80s, 70s and 60s. This is my era. Everything after that is like either there's some good stuff, but most of it is meh. Like it doesn't really speak to me in the same way as old stuff. I love old cinema. There were some tapes that unfortunately didn't work, so the episodes of Tales from the Crypt were not working, and Toy Story and something else, I don't remember. This is stuff I used to watch when I was a kid. Oh, it might seem strange to you to think that as a kid I was watching something like Tales from the Crypt, but ever since I was a kid, I had this fascination with horror. I think a lot of that boils down to one of my earliest memories from my childhood, and that was my grandparents taking me to random funerals. And this is not the same grandmother that died this summer. This is my different grandmother from my mother's side. They would take me to funeral and they would like talk to me about aging and dying. I think at this point, you know, you might be realizing how all those small pieces are falling into place and starting to form the whole. If you're thinking about what I talked about in my previous video about my ideas about sex and death, I think it all boils down to that early experience. So I developed this fascination with horror, and normally I wouldn't recommend, like if you're a parent, I wouldn't recommend you to show horror films or horror video games to your kid, by no means. But for me, that was a sort of a catharsis. That was a way for me to deal with what was going on inside my head. I mean, there's a lot of bad shit out there, you know, there's like slasher films that I really don't like, but what fascinates me is, you know, if you take all those stupid horror flicks and you can really think about it, it all really boils down to the fear of death, you know. Any killer like Freddy Krueger or Ghostface or Jason, all of that, like they wouldn't have this fear aspect if what they're doing wouldn't lead to person either getting hurt or dying. It's a fear of both physical, corporal pain and mortality that plays a role into that. And that what's so fascinating about psychological horror is that it skips all this thing on the surface and rather focuses on the actual nature of fear that's in our heads. So fascination with that was always there for me. One of the things I used to do when I was a kid, and when it would get dark, I would grab a flashlight. I would go down to the cellar, just walk around with my flashlight and try to have like a creepy sort of experience. I love that, and I think that part stayed with me, not just throughout my childhood, but from my adult life as well. I was recording a lot of this kind of like horror-inspired short films, things like that. I think you can actually find one example of that here on YouTube. There's some other stuff I've done. I love this aesthetic, this type of aesthetic, and I would love to make a psychological horror film at some point in my life if I'll ever get to it. It's not my priority right now, but at some point I would love to make and direct a film. Probably one of my biggest dreams I ever had. When I was, I think, 12, maybe, I bought this book about like writing a script for a film, a screenplay, and it was like a guide to just writing a screenplay. I absolutely loved that book. I've read it start to finish, and then I just started writing screenplays. I fell in love with cinema already at that point. I wrote a couple of screenplays. It's not that I would like try to get them out there, publish them, nothing like that. No, I was writing it for myself, and I did it for a couple of years, and then eventually I stopped because the whole bullying and dysphoria happened, and that basically ruined a lot of things for me. I think a lot of this fire that I had in me, this ambition, passion, died. And for most of my life, this whole passion would be coming back in waves. I would get like a short period of inspiration, and in that period I'll be working on things like music or recording like those weird artsy videos, things like that, or writing. I used to write a lot, both prose as well as poetry, but it was always in waves. Eventually it would die out, and I'll be absolutely dead inside and depressed all over again. General state of apathy. But overall, you know, looking back, I think my childhood before everything else happened was quite peaceful. You know, it's like going back to the time where nothing much really mattered other than you know, just playing around, messing around, having fun. I think we all have this nostalgic relationship towards our childhood in that way, and it's not different for me, even though my story is quite different than that of most people. I think we share that one thing in common. As a kid, I used to spend a lot of time outside. I wasn't that person who was glued to the screen all the time, even though, yes, I did have a fascination with films and video games. I would love to make films and video games. I always approached those things from a very artistic perspective. Artistic, not autistic, although maybe a little bit of both. But you know, I used to ride my bicycle, I used to climb trees, I spent a lot of time in the forest, until one day I was bitten by a tick. And I think for 2 years I didn't set my foot in the forest for like 2 bloody years because of that one tick. You know, like, my childhood was great. My parents were never very political, so I grew up outside of it. I had no interest in politics until I was like in my 20s whatsoever. So the political aspect of that was never what led me to transitioning. It was never an ideological thing. I've heard some people talking about me on the internet, both in Norway and outside of it, and they would refer to me as someone who, when I was young, I would get indoctrinated into this trans cult. And it just couldn't be further from the truth. Especially when I was never part of trans community. I didn't meet the first trans person in my life until I was already in the detransitioning period. Right? So that was never the case for me. I guess what it truly boils down to is me trying to escape from who I was. Me trying to escape from my own mortality, because that wouldn't be possible unless you women live forever, and so please share your secret. No, I mean escaping from my reality, because it was so unbearable for me to live. I'd rather want to be a woman than a half-assed man, which I thought of myself at that point. I guess I still think of myself that way, but you know, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I am who I am, and you know, there's nothing I can do about it. So I just embrace it. Yeah. And you know, so it happened that while I was there, I was thinking, should I go to the place which is my least favorite place on this whole goddamn planet? And that is the school. The school at which the bullying happened. And oh my god, I did that. I did step outside my house and I was on my way there. And I was thinking, like, do I really want to do this? Because it was just like such a traumatic experience for me associated with that place. I hated it more than everything else. I would probably burn that place down. And so I was on my way there, right? And my heart was pounding. I was constantly asking myself, do you really want to do this? Like, here's the thing, you didn't want to come to this town, but you've already done that. For your family, for your grandmother, right? You don't have to do this. You don't have to go this far. Because that's when the really bad memories would actually come out, right? But I decided, no, I would do this. I would do this. And on my way, I was like, you know, looking at the buildings. And this is the path I used to take, like, almost every single day. So there was a level of familiarity with that whole area. But, you know, looking at all those buildings I was passing on my way to the school, it was like the whole town just stuck in time. Because it was exactly like I remembered it. It's like absolutely nothing changed. And I think that's the case with a lot of those Eastern European towns. It's that you have those shitholes that just remain the same. It's like nothing has changed since the 90s. You know, it's the same place I remembered. How crazy is that? And it wasn't like a cozy small town. No, it was a shitty small town. I think those short videos you've seen, those segments that I've recorded while I was there, I think they should give you the general vibe of that area. And I was getting near to that place, right? Like with every step I've taken, I was getting closer. And my heart was pounding more and more. It was a pretty terrifying experience, honestly, because I haven't been there since I finished my middle school when I was 16, and oh boy, it was so weird getting there. Back then, I promised myself I would never ever go there ever again. I didn't even look back at the building on the last day of school, I just spring out and thinking, now I'm free. And I was thinking to myself, why the hell would I want to look back at my past? And for a long time I didn't. Like for a long time I was trying to forget it, but it's weird because I still get dreams of that place that remind me of that place. I would get dreams where I'm suddenly back at school, even though I'm an adult, but for some reason I have to go back there and attend the classes with those same people. And they haven't aged a day. Yeah, it's like in my dreams it's all the same. I also get dreams of Thailand. I get those dreams of being at a clinic. It happens several times a week, actually. I get the dreams that something has gone wrong and I need additional surgery to fix that. So I need to go to that same clinic in Thailand, in Bangkok, all over again. Oh, absolutely hate it. So, when I arrived there, I think it's best if you see it for yourself, because I recorded that experience. But I must warn you, the quality of that recording is really, really bad. I was recording on my phone, I was recording vertically, so just so you know. But I think it should give you an idea of what the place looked like. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to go inside, but enjoy. Alright, okay, so right now I'm standing right outside my old school. This is where I spent some of the worst years of my life. This building over here. And I'm about to step on the territory of the school, and I really don't know if I have balls to do that. I mean, I know I don't have balls. That is not up to discussion. But, you know, screw this, I'm doing it. I'm bloody doing it. It's been, well, 14 years. It's been 40 years since then. I can hear some people there. Just want to play football. It's summer time, so the school is obviously not open. Okay, right here. Right here is where I used to go to school. And okay, I absolutely hate being here. It's just like feeling so helpless, you know, like, fuck hell. At the same time, this fucking reminds me of how far I've come since then, you know, and well, most of it was luck, really. It was luck that I was able to get out of this place, and there's a school right behind me. And this is, I usually used to stand right here, just trying to get away from whatever shit was going down here. This is the stairs over there. That's where, sorry, I gotta sneeze. I have some bad kind of allergy. This is where like the kids were like making songs about me, singing how I'm a pussy, how I'm gay, how I'm the F word. I have no problem saying that, but you know, YouTube might demonetize me for some reason, even though I'm not using it as a slur. I'm just saying what they used to call me, and that's the fact. Oh shit. I don't know why I'm doing this, to be honest. Right now I'm just torturing myself. I guess it's never too late to become a masochist, right? But part of my past I needed to face was standing behind me here, and like so many memories here. Most of them are absolutely shitty. I can't say one positive thing about this place, to be honest. If it was up to me, this building would be now on fire. I would have no problem whatsoever putting this place on fire, like let it all burn down, but this is closure. This is me moving on. My past no longer haunts me, and honestly, like the longer I stand here, the better it gets. Like I'm not scared of this place anymore. I came down here and faced my bloody fear. So okay, honestly, that felt good. That felt good. Brilliant, really. Oh, I never had it on my bucket list. Actually, I never had a bucket list of any sorts. But hell, I can cross it off my bucket list. Oh. This place is stuck in time, to be honest. It's like nothing changed whatsoever. I was wondering whether the school is still there, whether something has changed, but it's exactly like I remember it. Except, you know, it was summer, it wasn't full of shitheads. I'm done with this. I'm done with this. And so I was on my way back home. I mean, not really home, but like my grandparents' home, or now just my grandfather's home. And after this whole experience, honestly, it was quite a relief. Yeah, I think I needed to do that. I needed to face my past in order to truly move on. Because I like to say to myself that I moved on, but I think there's always something holding you back to your past. And perhaps the goal isn't to move on as in forget what happened, but rather face it and accept it. And that is the way I moved on this time. Not just forgetting about it, pretending. No, I'm done with that. I faced it, and I feel so much fucking better for doing that. Boom. It's done, and I don't feel like a new person, nothing like that. I'm the same person, but I think it's everything that happened in my life in the last 2 years is what led me being able to do that. And it's a really satisfying feeling to be able to face your absolute worst fear. Because, let me be clear about it, that whole building, that whole area, this whole school represented my worst fear ever, or perhaps one of my worst fears, because I still think the fear of mortality, fear of dying, is my worst fear. There's one way to face that type of fear, but not yet. I think I should live and stay around for a little bit longer. Anyway, I was feeling pretty good, you know, and the truth is, it was so much easier than I expected. I thought it was going to be an absolutely difficult experience. I was sipping, I was like, oh no, I don't want to take one more step. No. Actually, like, here's the thing, the longer I was there, the easier it become. And it was like 1,000 memories going through your head at the same time, yeah. And those were memories associated with all the bullying that happened and everything that went down in that outside area of the school and inside in the corridors, in the classrooms. And you know, some of it was traumatic, some of it was kind of funny. A lot of my memories are associated with music for some reason, just music I used to listen around that time. And around the time when I was in middle school, I used to listen to a lot of System of a Down. I used to listen to a lot of Korn, Guano Apes, but also stuff like the Beatles, Paul Simon and Art Garfunkel, Pink Floyd, a lot of music from the 60s, even a lot of music from the 50s, old school rock and roll and old like acoustic music. I used to listen to a lot of Red Hot Chili Peppers. I used to listen to a lot of Nirvana, you know, stuff like that. The Prodigy. I used to listen to a lot of The Prodigy back then. And like every single part of my life is associated with a specific music. My last year of middle school, I used to listen to a lot of goth rock, or like gothic music, things like that. I used to listen to Super Eternus. I used to listen to The Cure, so like The Cure's darker albums. Actually, I think most of The Cure albums are absolutely fantastic, but that's the type of music I liked back then. And I'll always like to go back to the music I used to listen to. I listen to some very different stuff today than I used to listen to back then, you know, because I listen to a lot of jazz right now. I listen to a lot of like progressive rock and metal. I love stuff like King Crimson. I love Porcupine Tree. I love Tool. I love Dream Theater. I love Rush, things like that. And yeah, like I said, a lot of jazz. I love Miles Davis and Chet Baker, Sonny Rollins, that kind of stuff. Even classical music. And my love for classical music actually developed back when I was in middle school. That's also when I started playing guitar. So it's always memories associated with music. And some of those memories are very pleasant, some less, some are quite painful. But, you know, my least favorite type of memory is the happy memory. Because, you know, the painful memories, you're happy they're gone. But there is something much worse about those good memories, because you know you can't get them back. They will like stay there in the past, and you can try and reach out for them how much you want, but you will never be able to grab them again. You know, it's not coming back, and that is much harder to deal with than the painful memories. You know, I think we all, or at least most of us, have those memories that we wish could just stay. You know, like I would always want things to stand that way, and it just makes me think of quotes by Heraclitus, an ancient Greek philosopher, pre-Socratic philosopher. There is no stepping into the same river twice. And while this quote, you know, symbolizes the general cycle, natural cycle that is happening in nature, greatly understood by his concept of fire. But I think there's also some fact of life in that quote, and that is, you know, that your memories, they stay there, but things will never be the same. Like, things always change. You can visit old places, but it's not the same, you know? Even if all the buildings are the same, even if all the furniture in your house would stay the same, if you go back to that place 10 years later, you are not the same person. Everything has changed. Anyway, that was it for this video, but next week I'm announcing something big. Something I've been working on for the past month. No, actually more than a month. 1.5 months. And I'm not going to say what it is for now, but next week I'll reveal everything. The whole truth will be revealed. With that being said, take care of yourself, and I'll see you next week. Ciao.